Hey guys, welcome to the ninth video in the Writing and Language lecture series. Today the topic is going to be verbs. So just an overview of what we're going to be covering today. I'm going to be covering verb tense and subject-verb agreement. So yeah, verbs are one of the most difficult parts of speech, if not the most difficult, because they have to be conjugated, unlike nouns. So conjugated means just like changing the tense and maybe adding certain words such as like are or have, stuff like that, just to make it make sense. So yeah, there are many different ways to conjugate a certain verb, but the SAT will only offer four choices, and generally one of them will be pretty obvious. So for subject-verb agreement, this one is, I'd say, a much more simple topic. You just have to figure out how to make the subject and verb agree in number. So for verb tense, there are three different main tenses for verbs, which are past, present, and future. So, like a verb in the past tense will describe an action that happened. A verb in present tense will describe like an action that does happen now or is happening. And a verb in the future tense will describe a verb that will happen. So, each tense can be split into four different categories, which we see in the chart as simple, perfect, progressive, and perfect progressive. So there's, for example, past, I ran, I had run, I was running, I had been running. So had, was, had been, all these are kind of conjugated differently depending on the tense. So yeah, you don't really need to get into all of that. You just need to know the main past, present, or future. And the rest of it, it's pretty much a basic knowledge of English. So um, another way to differentiate verbs is by verb mood. So the two main moods are indicative, which shows like a factual, thing, like something is a fact, factual action, I mean, and conditional, which shows a possible action. So an example of indicative mood is Spike chewed the dog toy yesterday. He did chew it, like we know that's a fact. So chewed is since chewed is factual, then it's in indicative mood. So here's an example of conditional mood. Like say you left Spike at home with the dog toy. You don't know if he did chew the dog toy, but he might have. So Spike might have chewed the dog toy yesterday. That's a possible action, so might have chewed. That's conditional mood. So you really don't need to know mood at all, just the tenses, but it's good to know at least some basics of the difference between these two. So my number one tip to solve these questions is to determine the tense of the verb. So since verb tense questions will um, there's many different choices. There's at least like the 12 in this chart here, plus more if you factor in verb mood and stuff like that. So it can easily get out of hand. But if you determine past, present, or future tense, that can really narrow down your options. So it'll limit your choices down to like one or two. It'll generally be two. Sometimes it's three. But yeah, so at that point, you can just substitute it in to see which one makes the most sense. So yeah, know the right tense, and yeah, if you just have a general knowledge of English, one choice will sound the best. So here's an example question. Before our conversation yesterday, Paul has never heard the word brouhaha. Now he hears it everywhere he goes. So Paul has never heard is kind of, it doesn't really sound right. If we look at some clues from the sentence to figure out like the main tense, it says before our conversation yesterday. So that kind of indicates to us that it should be a past tense because it says before. So it's talking about how Paul never heard it in the past tense. So if we go through all these, the only one that doesn't really fit past tense is A, no change. All the others could kind of make sense. So now we're just going to substitute it in. Paul had never heard the word. Paul was never heard by. Paul was never hearing the word. So the best choice for this is just B, because once we narrowed it down to past tense and then just sounded it out, B was the best choice. So yeah, the word before will give that hint, but sometimes you won't be able to get a hint from clues such as words like before or after, stuff like that. So another good strategy is to just look at the verb tense around the question. So pretty much all the time, all the verbs within a sentence or paragraph will match in tense. So you can just look at the tense of the other verbs and then match that. So the next example, before the museum closed permanently, it faced financial challenges that include a large deficit in declining ticket sale revenues. So what I'm going to do here is since I can't really get any good clues, um, I'm going to look at the other verbs within the sentence, which are closed and faced. So closed and faced, I have like a pretty good idea that include should also match the tense of those since it's within the same paragraph. So the choice that best matches it is D, included, because that's the same tense as faced and closed. Um, yeah, so I think the last tip I have is if the verb's just a statement of general fact, then it should be in the simple present tense. So that's like eat, smile, coexist. These are just some examples. When you think of the verb in its simplest form, that's a simple present tense. So, Antarctic pearlwort, a low-growing shrub with characteristic yellow flowers, is one of only two native flowering plants which were occurring in Antarctica. So, this is a statement of general fact. It's not really an action that happened, like the plant didn't occur, like it wasn't an event. And since this is a statement of general fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the one that's just the simple present tense, which is just be, occur. So, it's one of only two native flowering plants which occur in Antarctica. That's the best choice. It's the most simple, and yeah. When it's a statement of general fact, you pretty much always want to go with the most simple one, but always substitute all the choices in just to make sure there isn't one that's more correct. All right. So the next topic is subject-verb agreement. So you have to pretty much make the subject and verb agree in number. So if it's a plural subject, you want to make it link with a plural verb. And if it's singular, you want to make sure it links to singular. So often these questions will match a plural subject with a singular verb or vice versa. So pretty much the strategy is to, first of all, identify the subject and the verb. So they won't necessarily be next to each other, and it won't always be the subject and then the verb. It might be verb first, so you have to be pretty careful. You should read through the sentence, just look at all the clues to figure out what the subject is. So next, you determine the number of the subject. So you want to determine if it's a plural subject or singular. So here's an example. If it's geese, then the subject's plural. If it's goose, then it's just singular. One tricky thing is that collective nouns such as family, team, and bunch, these all refer to like a number of things. Like family is a number of relatives, team is a number of players, and bunch is a number of things within the bunch. Um, these are all treated as singular nouns. So the next thing is make sure the verb agrees with the number of the subject. So I couldn't really tell you a good formula for, determining if a verb or how to make a verb singular or plural. You just have to have experience with that. So here's an example. The geese do fly. Geese is plural, and do is the plural form of do, I guess. And if you make it singular, the goose does fly. Then, since the subject is singular, goose, does is also the singular form of do. So here's an example question. A Neapolitan pizza made with San Marzano tomatoes are considered more traditional than one made with any other type of tomatoes. So the first step is to identify the subject and the verb. We can see that the verb is are, it's underlined, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So I think there are two possible choices for the subject, which is Neapolitan pizza or San Marzano tomatoes. So if we look through the rest of the sentence, it says are considered more traditional than one made with any other type of tomatoes. So we can infer that one means pizza, and since it's comparing the subject, one of these two, with a pizza made with any other type of tomatoes, we can assume that the subject is the Neapolitan pizza. And since the Neapolitan pizza is a singular subject, this should be a singular verb. So the best choice is. because are is actually plural. Yeah, so that's it. There are, I believe, 6 practice problems, and yeah, you know the drill. The answers are at the end. So thanks for watching.